I stared at the phone in my hand like it had just confessed to murder. Dad's voice still echoed in my ear. Carol wants a sophisticated wedding. Her business friends are all coming. You'd just not fit. Not fit. My own father's wedding. I hung up. The silence in my office felt heavier than it should have. Outside, the city pulsed with life, cars honking, people laughing, the world spinning like nothing had fractured. But something had. Something I'd been ignoring for months. I opened my laptop. 3 clicks. Investment portfolio, Prestige Marketing Group. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Withdraw all capital from Prestige Marketing Group, effective immediately. Send." Carol, my stepmother-to-be, the woman who'd slithered into Dad's life 18 months ago with her sharp suits and sharper smile, the woman who ran Prestige Marketing Group, the firm I'd quietly invested in when Dad asked, a favor, family helping family. Except I wasn't family anymore. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath me. The office smelled like coffee and expensive cologne. My assistant had left hours ago. It was just me and the skyline and the quiet rage building in my chest like a storm I refused to release. Dad called to uninvite me, to his own wedding, because I wouldn't fit. I should have felt something. Hurt, betrayal, sadness. Instead, I felt cold. It started small. 3 weeks ago at dinner, Carol had insisted on some overpriced restaurant downtown. Dad sat beside her, smiling too wide, laughing too loud. She kept touching his arm, kept glancing at me with something I couldn't name. Pity? No. Calculation. She'd leaned in during dessert, her voice syrupy. "Your father's told me so much about you. Such a generous son, supporting the business like you do." I'd smiled, said nothing. But I'd noticed the glance she'd shared with Dad, the way his hand squeezed hers under the table. I'd noticed everything. My phone buzzed. A text from my CFO. "Withdrawal confirmed. Prestige Marketing just lost $4.2 million in active capital. Want me to reallocate?" I typed back, "Hold." Carol's firm had been bleeding money for months. I'd seen the reports, the investor calls I wasn't supposed to be on. She'd been propping it up with new capital injections, mostly from Dad, mostly from his retirement fund. And now, from me, or rather, she thought from me. I pulled up the documents I'd been collecting. Bank transfers, investment statements, a private investigator's report I'd commissioned 2 weeks ago when the dinner left a bitter taste I couldn't swallow. The PI had been thorough. Carol wasn't just marrying my father, she was liquidating him. The wedding was in 4 days. I didn't plan to attend, but I planned to be present. I arrived at Dad's house unannounced. The sprawling estate he'd bought after Mom died, the one Carol had redecorated within 3 months of moving in. He opened the door, surprised. "Son, I thought we talked about." I did. I stepped inside. "I'm not here about the wedding." Carol appeared from the living room, glass of wine in hand. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Darling," she purred to Dad, "I didn't know we were expecting company." "We're not." I set my briefcase on the entry table. "This will only take a minute." Dad frowned. "What's this about?" I opened the briefcase, pulled out a folder, handed it to him. "Investment withdrawal confirmation, Prestige Marketing Group. My firm pulled $4.2 million in active capital this morning." Carol's wine glass trembled, just slightly. "You would," Dad started. "Read page 3, I said. He did. His face drained of color. Page 3 detailed Carol's financial history, the failed ventures, the debts, the pattern of relationships with older, wealthy men who mysteriously lost significant assets before she moved on. Page 4 showed the timeline of Dad's accounts, the transfers, the liquidations. Page 5 was a prenuptial agreement Carol had quietly prepared, one that gave her access to 70% of his estate in the case of divorce. Dad looked up at her. She didn't speak. "I hired someone," I said quietly, "a forensic accountant and a PI. They've been working for 2 weeks. "You had no right," Carol's voice cracked. "I had every right." I met her eyes. "You were bleeding him dry. You still are." Dad sank into a chair. I pulled out one more document, placed it in front of him. "Prestige Marketing Group is bankrupt. Will be officially within 6 weeks. You've poured nearly $2 million into it over the last year. Money she told you was investments. It wasn't. It was life support for a dying company she's been using as a tax shelter." Carol's hands shook. "The wedding," I continued, "was the exit strategy. You marry him, files for divorce within a year, and walks away with enough to restart somewhere else, with someone else." Silence. Dad didn't look at her. I closed the briefcase. "I've withdrawn my capital. I suggest you do the same, with everything." Carol tried to speak, tried to explain. I didn't stay to listen. Dad called the next morning, said the wedding was off, said he was sorry. I told him I'd think about it, but I didn't feel forgiveness. I felt nothing. Weeks later, I sat in my office again. Same view, same silence. My assistant knocked. "Your father's here. Tell him I'm busy." She hesitated, left. I turned back to the window. Some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Some people don't deserve